Hey everyone, this is Erin, the founder of Lady Bee Collective, and for this YouTube topic, we are going to talk about bad mental health days. And for me, I want to give some tips and different ways that I use to cope with these days. And I want to divide them into three types of bad mental health days. So for one, I call it kind of like the bad experience or something happens mental health day. And that's when literally something happens, it's bad. Maybe the night before that day that causes us to have a bad mental health day. Two, the physical symptoms of not feeling good. So maybe it's chronic health conditions, physical conditions, you're just not feeling well, and that is a huge cause of feeling a lot of anxiety and depression. And then third is just having a bad day. And that happens a lot where you just, you wake up and you don't feel great, you don't want to get out of bed, you're just having a bad mental health day and you really don't know why, right? So those are the three kind of mental health days, bad mental health days that I kind of endure, and I think other people do too. So first, I just want to say that we all have mental health, right? I never really looked at it that way because everything was so focused on physical health, but we really truly do all have mental health, and sometimes it's just worse than others, and we are all part of these bad mental health days. And for a really long time, I thought, how can I get rid of them, right? I'm just going to do whatever to never have that bad mental health day. Well, that's just not possible. So I think the first step is really accepting that these days happen. And once we can accept that they happen, then what happens is we do our best to make them kind of go as smoothly as possible, if that makes sense, right? So if we deny that they're happening, or we're just like, oh God, it's happening again, and that just kind of adds to it. So accepting that there's going to be, again, the ebb and flow of life, and there's just going to be bad days, and some are going to be worse than others. But for me, kind of finding different things to do for these days and in general has helped me. So the first one would be, this is the one I have the hardest time with, is when there's like a bad experience or kind of something out of the blue or something happens, right? So for me, I like to kind of be on a schedule that helps me. And when something gets a little bit off schedule, or I hear bad news or something kind of gets me down, it really affects me. I have a hard time with my nervous system and emotionally regulating. So when I don't have the time to figure it out, I'm like, oh my gosh. And there's been times where it's ruined an entire day. And my emotions get the best out of me, or I can't do much. So I have learned when that happens to kind of take in the information, and right away my nervous system just kind of gets really revved up. It's something I can't really help in terms of like, it's automatic, it happens. So when I feel it happening, I literally just kind of step away and I take deep breaths. And I know, like, for me before, I'd be like, I can't do that, I'm too upset, like this is awful, who has time for deep breaths? But it is very important, even if you are crying, even if you are feeling bad, to really take like a long deep breath, and take many of them, right? So take a deep breath, then at the top hold it, and then let it out. And this will help regulate your nervous system, because for me, once it starts getting way off track, it's really hard to get back on track and make the rest of the day go okay. So for me, just having that time to just breathe, and I focus on either like a good memory, or to be honest, when it's really, really bad, I just focus on my breathing. Like I just listen to like my breathing, the sounds in the room, anything that I can concentrate on just for those like 5 or 10 minutes to try to help me regulate it, right? And sometimes I'll cry through it. I'm human, and sometimes it's just awful. But I have noticed that helps really. It helps so much. And next, I will just force myself to drink some water, because I'm probably crying at this time, or I kind of have kind of an amped up anxiety system, and I tend to not drink as much as I should. So just drinking a glass of water will really, really help. And And then depending on what it is or what I hear, I try to just think about it from a different perspective. So I'm going to be honest right away, my thoughts are just going to go towards the negative, and it's going to go towards a catastrophic type of thinking. But if I start to think that and feel that a little bit, and then I change my mindset, like, hey, you might not know everything, or hey, what's going on here? And at that moment, sometimes I kind of need a mediator, right? So whether it be a significant other, a friend, a family member, a therapist, somebody that I can kind of talk through what I'm feeling, right? I always try to make sure that they have the time and space for me to talk through with this. But it helps me to kind of let things out, to get a different perspective, right? And I've noticed between drinking the water and breathing, like as simple as this sounds, and just talking to someone, that really does help me out on this, to kind of find kind of your like compass back to like, hey, okay, we can emotionally regulate this. Now, a little disclaimer, this is not saying when bad things happen, you shouldn't cry and there's not going to be a reaction to it. But for me, these little things are important because those reactions will probably still come, but I still have to make sure to take care of myself during the process. And those are the main things, along with, if I do have the time, I will try to just lay down, and let me just kind of feel the feelings, right? It sucks. I hate feeling that way. I hate wanting to just lay and cry, but if that's what it calls for, then that's what it calls for. And I think once you get more in tune, like we've talked about, with your body and what you need, your body and mind will tell you. So that, for that situation, has really helped me out. The second situation, when it's physical, right? So I will get, from generalized anxiety, I will get headaches, stomach pains, sometimes just like body aches. For all you women out there, you know this, PMS, that's at least 1 week each month. I just won't feel great. And obviously when I physically don't feel good, and not to mention with everything going on with COVID and those worries, that tends to really affect my anxiety, right? So I start to get health anxiety, where my mind will just start going to all the bad places, right? Or we've all done this. We'll Google every single thing that it could be, and that just exacerbates it, like really bad. So I've noticed when I don't feel good, I've noticed that I have to do a lot of self-talk. So I will say, like, and ask myself questions. Have you felt this pain before? Okay, you have. You know that in time it will pass, right? Or maybe there's some pain relievers, or a hot shower, a heating pad, different stuff that I've used in the past. I will try to kind of implement before like the pain gets that bad, right? So I'll try to even mark it down on a calendar if I know there's certain times where I get more inflamed, or I don't feel good, or I can notice that I'm getting maybe tired or stuffed up the night before, and I may take a vitamin C. I may go to bed an hour earlier or sleep in an hour later, just kind of proactive ways, and then reminding myself that this is temporary. And I know that's super cliche, and it's like, oh God, remind yourself it's temporary when you're in the worst pain. Yeah, that's really hard to do, because you don't give a shit, to be honest, that it's temporary when you're in that pain. But if you can proactively do some of those things, and if you've known that you have this pain, then I think that helps. And maybe, again, even getting a little bit more rest, or doing some stuff that you feel good about, in terms of how you've dealt with it in the past, and just being gentle with yourself and saying, like, it's okay to slow down. It's okay today to have to push things to the next day or in a few days. Like, that's perfectly fine. And we'll go into this in another video, but just about boundaries and not feeling that, kind of woman thing usually to have to get everything done in a day. So I find that that's very helpful for me, to kind of write down a schedule and kind of write down, hey, these are the times when I'm not feeling good, or when I haven't been and what's worked for me, what hasn't, and make sure that I kind of have a little bit of a plan, because that in turn will help me lower my anxiety, which will in turn help with pain, because pain always gets worse with anxiety. And also, if you have anxiety or depression, you've probably heard of psychosomatic symptoms, where a lot of our anxiety and depression comes out in our body. And so when we can start to see if it's like an actual physical illness as opposed to anxiety, depression, we can start to kind of figure out the best ways to help ourselves with those. And lastly, which is probably the hardest, is kind of just those days where like you don't know why you're not feeling great mentally, right? Like you just wake up and you're cranky and you don't want to maybe get out of bed, and every little thing that somebody says or does pisses you off. Like, I don't know if you've been there, but I have, and there's just those days. And sometimes you don't even realize it. Like sometimes somebody has to say something to you. But for me, I can kind of feel myself get a little agitated. And before I'd kind of let it go, hoping it would pass. But what it does is it's kind of like a snowball effect. It gets worse, and that's no good. And so for me, when I feel myself getting agitated, I again go to the breathing and kind of to sit there and to kind of ask myself like what's going on. And a lot of times people that have gone through trauma or just have mental health issues, it's just part of how it is. It could be a side effect of medication. It could just be chronic stress, chronic anxiety, chronic trauma. And unfortunately, those remnants kind of catch up with us, right? Like if it's been a long week, if our diet's kind of off, right? Not diet, but like just the foods we're eating, if we're going to bed at different times, if it's higher stress for whatever reason, after a little while, we kind of just have these days. And it doesn't even have to be anything. It really just could be these days. And I think sometimes we get hard on ourselves. Like we have to pinpoint it, right? There's like this way in society where like every time you're feeling something, you have to know exactly why and like what to do about it and what's bothering you. And a lot of times I'm like, I don't know what's bothering me. Like, I don't know why I'm like that. But when I either talk to somebody or for me, I journal it. Like I will start journaling, like I'm feeling pissy, I'm mad, I'm angry. And as I'm kind of journaling, sometimes it kind of comes to me like what the underlying reason is. And other times it just allows me to get it off my chest in kind of a healthier way. And I just kind of write it. And if you don't write, maybe you can just like jot down words, or maybe some people just run, they exercise, any kind of movement. Other people might paint. Sometimes I love to paint during that. Just something to kind of ease that anxiety, right? And to kind of go, okay, I need some space. Because before, when I'd be feeling this way, I thought it would just go away. And I thought if I kept super busy and went on with my day, it would get better. And like I said, that's that snowball effect where it really just starts affecting every aspect of your life. And before you know it, you're just feeling completely out of control. And it's hard to take that back, right? And lastly, I would just say that sometimes it's just a bad day, and we're allowed to have those and to be gentle with ourselves. This is something that is very difficult for me to learn, to rest and not be hard on myself and not think, well, you have to do this, and why is this happening to you, and God, why did you allow this and this, and just really talking badly to myself. And I didn't realize I was talking so badly to myself until I started being like, wow, like, would you say this to somebody else who was having a bad day? Like, you wouldn't. And I started just also thinking, what would you tell a loved one when they felt that way? Like, you would be supportive and you would take care of yourself in whatever way you see fit. And I think that's important for us, again, to mirror for ourselves. And sometimes, well, a lot of times we don't care for ourselves the same way we care for others. But when we can actually say, this is what we would do, and then implement that, it is really, really helpful. So that's how I deal with a bad day. And I would love to hear if you have any tips or ways to help people deal with a bad mental health day, because we all go through them. And I'd love to hear from that. So just comment below. Subscribe to my channel. I hate these weird plugs, but you got to do them. Yeah, so hopefully you like this. Let me know what else you want to hear on my YouTube. Also go to ladybecollective.com. There's so much there that you can learn about with just stepping into your purpose and your power, and books and clothing and all sorts of good stuff. And also you can DM me on Instagram or Facebook. You can also email me at info@ladybecollective.com. And let's kind of do this. Let's make this community someplace where we can just grow and learn. So I would love that. I think that's it. Oh yes, and don't ever forget that you are capable, you are enough, and you're worthy. So with that being said, I think that that's it for this time. And again, I'd love to hear from you, and I really hope that this helps you for when you are having a bad mental health day. So I will talk to you next week, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Bye.